Welcome back. We're going to talk about PCI, payment card industry today. And the whole essence of PCI is a collection of security guidelines that guarantees that all organizations who accept, process, store, or send our credit card information maintains a secure environment, which is critical to any society to enable trust and allow efficiency within the process. This was launched in 2006, September 7th, and the overall governing principle within the PCI security standard ensures that organizations that process our credit card information abide by these guidelines at all times. And there was a council of payment card companies that came together, such as Visa, American Express, Discovery, MasterCard, and a bunch of other key players. And the industry standard, security standard in general, focuses on manufacturers and software developers, the merchant and processor in general, to ensure they abide by those guidelines. Very important. And what are those PCI standards? It's very fundamental to understand. It is any entity that stores, processes, and transmits cardholder data. As simple as that. If you transmit that data, it's important you abide by those PCI standards. It also covers technical and operational systems components included in or connected to cardholder data. So it's pretty decent law and guideline that protects consumers a lot. It gets into PIN entry device security requirement, also PCI PED. It applies to the manufacturers who specify and implement the device characteristic, the management, and how our PIN system is done, the entry process in the terminal, used for the payment itself. So it's a pretty good guideline to ensure most people are doing the right thing. The other thing is the Payment Application Data Security Standard, PADSS. It applies for the software developers and system integrators of the different applications that store, process, or transmit this data to ensure the right authorization or settlement is appropriately done. So it's a good oversight in general. The PCI Standard Council sets the standard for PCI security in general, and every payment card brand has its own program for compliance. The fundamentals will be the same thing. The council provides program for two kinds of certification in general. The first one is the qualified security assessor. The second is the approved scanning vendor. And I'll talk about each one of them. For the qualified security assessor, these are organization companies that assist organizations in reviewing the security of their payment transaction systems in general. They have trained personnel and processes to assess and validate compliance with PCI, DSS, and PADSS. So they have trained personnel. That could be you and I that are trained to perform those assessments for different organizations. The second part is the approved scanning vendors. And they provide commercial software tools to perform the certified vulnerability scans for your system to ensure there are no malware, viruses, or any malicious actors there. So they do a good fit scan to ensure things are properly done. Self-assessment questionnaire, SAQ. So most of the time, organizations would ensure that they have a process in place to do continuous assessment. So validation tools for merchants and service providers who are not required to do on-site assessment for PCI DSS compliance in general. And different self-assessment questionnaires are specified for various business situations. So it really mostly depends. Some 6 steps of the PCI DSS assessment process in general. Number 1, we confirm the scope of the PCI DSS assessment. Number 2, perform a PCI DSS assessment of the environment. Number 3, complete the applicable report for the assessment. Number 4, complete an attestation of compliance for service provider or merchant as applicable. Then number 5, submit the SAQ and the attestation of compliance and any other requested documentation. Then finally, perform remediation to address requirements that are not in place and provide an updated reporting. So if there are gaps, if there are issues noted, we expect you to come with a plan to fix those issues. And in general, in terms of from a data security point of view, some key things we should think about in terms of validation. Number one, do not retain full magnetic stripe card. Number two, provide secure password features. Three, protect stored card holder data. Four, log application activity like an audit trail. Five, develop a solid secure application process. Six, protect wireless transmission. That is fairly decent, like many the middle attack to attack transmission of data to make sure it's protected. Seven, test applications to address vulnerabilities. So it's important to keep testing over time. Eight, facilitate secure network implementation. The design of implementing your network, if it's segmented or not, should be well designed with security in mind. Number nine, do not store cardholder data on server connected to the internet. So it should be a standalone, encrypted, and a very solid data validation process to ensure data at rest is protected. Number 10, facilitate secure remote software updates. So if you have a vendor coming in, logging in remotely, the process should be secured. Number 12, encrypt sensitive traffic over public network. Encryption should be really, really on point. Encrypt all non-console administrative access also. Then finally, maintain instructional documentation, training, awareness programs for the customers, the resellers, the integrators. Every one of the key stakeholders should also be constantly trained over time. So those are the key things there in terms of what we focus on in the assessment. This is a very interesting page here. And of course, the PED security requirements, pin entry devices. This applies to companies that make the device that accept a pin entry for all pin-based transaction. And so this is very important. When we go to our ATM, we put in the pin, the validation process by these manufacturers. Also, there's solid, constant verification to ensure they are the right people and to prevent malicious actors from exploiting vulnerable processes. Some additional PCI requirements for shared hosting providers. This is to create a safeguard around hosting environment. With the advent of the cloud, inclusive or on-prem system, it is meant for hosting providers who offer shared hosting environments for several customers on the same server. So there should be some reasonable security around those hosting also. For entities using SSL, LETLS for card present point of sales terminal connection. So it means we want to ensure the right security apparatus are used. It allows the use of existing implementation of the LESSL and TLS. Service providers still supporting LESSL, TLS must maintain a risk and mitigation plan. So right now, the most current SSL and TLS must be used. If you are not using it, you should have solid controls and mitigation plan in place. Marshal must be able to maintain vigilance in monitoring of new vulnerabilities. So as vulnerabilities are coming, we should have a proper scanning mechanism in place for our organization. And in conclusion, very important, the PCI compliance exercise should be constantly done. It should be periodically done and in a very robust and efficient way. And that's the summary. We'll see you in the next program. Before then, the quick one we just talked about is, this is just some questions and answer. What is PCI? Think about it, and that's going to be your lab. Another one we said is, what year was PCI launched? We know it's 2006 for sure, and you can see the answer there. PCI data security standard applies to who? It applies to any entity that stores, processes, and transmit our card holder data. Who is a qualified security assessor? They are companies that assist organizations in reviewing the security of their payment transaction systems and have trained personnel and processes to assess and validate compliance with PCI DSS and PA DSS. So these are organizations that they focus on helping other organizations reviewing the security of their payment transaction. What is the work of approved scanning vendors? They provide commercial software tools to perform the vulnerability scan for your system. And what are the 6 steps of PCI assessment process? 1, confirm the scope of the PCI assessment, perform the PCI assessment of the environment, complete the applicable report of the assessment, complete the attestation of compliance of service providers or merchant as applicable. 5, submit the self-assessment questionnaires and the attestation of compliance and any other requested documentation. And finally, perform remediation to address those vulnerability or weakness that was found as a result of the assessment. And the general goal of the payment application data security standard for developers is typically to prevent compromising complete magnetic stripe data located on the back of a payment card. So that is really what that is meant for. PIN entry device PED security requirements for manufacturers is applied where it applies to companies that make devices that accept PIN entry for all PIN-based transactions. And that's it for now. We'll see you in the next program. Thank you.